This is Chaise Cortes De Vargas, and I was just interviewed by Keith Andrew. I tell you, keep it here for the hottest, most controversial, engaging content. Period. Love you, Keith.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Keith Andrew. You know me as the talk show host with a learning disability. This is episode 1182. That's right, 1182 episodes available on the Keith Andrew Network. That's available on all social media. So you can find the Keith Andrew Network on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Make sure to like, share, comment. That being said, first subject I want to talk to you about is icebreakers. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Keith. Thank you for having me on your show. This is an honor and it's such a thrill to be with you. Well, my name is Chaise Cortes De Vargas. I am a producer and SAG-AFTRA member and actress. And I have been so for quite some time now. And I'm excited to be aboard to talk to you today, not only about myself, but also I would like to know more about yourself and your viewers and everything like that. And I feel very honored to be here. So I have been a producer for quite some time now because I have only begun producing for movies and series, but I have also produced for news. I have a news background, having worked in English as well as Spanish television, broadcast news for New York 1, for News 12 New Jersey, RNN Fios 1 News, as well as CBS 3 in Philly. So I've done the whole tri-state. And I have worked in the industry for about 15 years. And it's a very interesting industry. It is very fast moving. It also is very stressful. I've been doing it since 2005 and I ended around 2020, around the pandemic. Why is it stressful? It's for many reasons. But you kind of know because news is a very fast-moving, fast-paced industry. And so therefore, usually you have your hair on fire, everyone's screaming at each other. And it's not because people are being mean, even though there are mean people, but it's the nature of the beast. You have to be at all times informing everyone. Everyone is trying to get things done. What I mean by done is the movie industry is a bit different than the news industry. Because in news, we create stories, entire shows from scratch. There is nothing, we might have a story or two that's being developed, but when we sit around in our editorial meetings in the mornings, we are pitching each other, talking about follow-up stories or stories that are developing. And man, it's really hard to develop 5 to 7 hours of news a day out of nowhere.
No, I agree with you 100%. I actually reached out to News 12, and I can tell you her name off the air. I won't saying she's really great, but I never met her, but I heard good things about her. But we can talk about her off the air. But I reached out, and it wasn't just News 12 I reached out to. I also reached out to CBS Radio. even though that's another subject we get to later on. I reached out to them, I reached out to ABC, and I say, hey, I'm a talk show host with a learning disability. It's not an official, wink, wink, it's not an official, but I made and interviewed 1,182 people with a disability. I fall under the spectrum of the R word, and I'm showing you I can be an inspiration for people with and without disabilities. Hey, I have a story, and then I'm like, well, would you like to interview me? And they're like, well, have you been on TV? Do you have a book? What else do you do? Yeah, it's great. You have a disability and all. Pat yourself on the back, like, what was that, a freaking medal or something? But it's like, yeah, it's great, but we don't think it's interesting. But yeah, on the news, this is why I hate the news and why I don't watch the news. I can sum up news at 11 for you. This is news at 11 or news at 6. Rape, murder, killings, stabbings. Okay, sports and weather. You can't just have anything about, well, how about well, what about a fluff piece? What about something like a milestone? Today in milestone, we're going to talk about this person who hit a milestone and talk about their accomplishments. Now, let's talk about rapes and murders and muggings and all that screwed up crap because that's what people wanted to be entertained. I interviewed someone who said, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. And you're not in your head, so obviously you know that expression. But it's like, my thing is that not saying that I have a big head. Some people think I have my head off my ass, uh, but it's just if you have a very strong message, especially like what I'm doing, it should want to do it, even if it's one time. Let the person share their story. Let the person share the story and inspire other people. Because it's every day, you know. I even wrote down some other questions where I got talked about, COVID, price inflation, and Trump being president, and Elon Musk pulling the strings, and shootings and gangs in the city. At the end of the day, after you watch the news, you feel like you're gonna jump out the freaking window. But shouldn't you want to hear something that's like, what I liked about News 12? They took the time to hear this person's story. Or what I like about CNN or NS, or whatever the hell the stations are called, they took the time to be different. It isn't the same copy and paste story, and they're going to tweak it, if that makes any sense. And you worked in the news industry, so you can obviously know all about it.
You know, I must say, to begin with your story, um, when you pitched them, and I worked at the news desk. That's the nerve center. That's the tip. That's the spear from which everything in any news station emanates. Um, I call it the trenches, which is really the hardest aspect of any department in the news station. But I believe that if you had contacted me, and it's not because you're interviewing me, yes, indeed, if it bleeds, it leads. However, there has been a movement away from that because people have become desensitized to that type of story. Like it's depressing. Like you said, people want to jump out the windows. And I agree. And there has been a movement, at least with regards to the stations that I worked at, which was CBS 3 Philly, News 12 New Jersey, not Long Island, RNN, Fios 1 News in Westchester. It closed down. And well, Telemundo 47, which is really NBC Uni in Spanish. Yes, they still look at if it bleeds, it leads, because the Latino community are fascinated by blood. And as well as Univision, which is, in other words, ABC. Yes, they enjoyed that. But the other stations I worked for, they were moving away from that because people don't always want to be depressed. Now, the first block, which is always the top of the show, it always tends to lead with something that is more impactful. And the criteria being, if it impacts the community the most, you must lead with it. So, for example, it can be a shooting, but it must be an unusual shooting that, like, for example, a child. But if it's like some drug dealer shooting another drug dealer, unless there was someone innocent, they'll put that back to the second and third blocks, whereby you really don't. It doesn't lead the newscast. You'll have something like our President Trump signing a new executive order that affects more people. Why? Because the criteria, once again, it affects more people instead of some scumbag shooting another scumbag.
Yeah.
I mean, now for you, and I started with you, I think your story is very interesting and it wouldn't lead, but it would be great as a fluff story, an inspiring story. And I would certainly put it as a VOSOT, if not, certainly a package, which a VOSOT means, you get, for example, you're speaking. It's voice over sound over tape, where I hear your voice speaking, and then we have the reporter speaking. And then a package is something like, here we are at the Keith Andrews Show, who has proven that empowerment means nothing with a disability. Right? That's me speaking from the field producer standpoint. And I would have certainly have done your story because it's inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been interviewed on Manhattan Neighborhood of Broadcasting. That was about, I think, 19 or 20. It was before the pandemic. I was interviewed in Chester, New York, on their newspaper. I was interviewed on Fuzzbead. So I was interviewed about 3 times, but we can always talk about that off the air. But the next question I want to talk to you about is how has the COVID pandemic impacted your life? And do you think eventually it's going to become the new normal? Is it going to go away? Now we have to worry about the bird flu. So do you think that's going to be the next pandemic that people are going to talk about instead of COVID?
How did it affect me? Well, I became a mixologist. Didn't we all? A little liquor here and there. What else could we do? People were mixing like crazy, and I was one of them. I mean, it was something that none of our generation or the generations that are alive were expecting, but everything is a cycle. Um, and even though we do have in more recent history that in the late 1920s we had this pandemic, um, we were not prepared for it because humankind tends to have amnesia or forget despite having it on the books. And although medicine was a lot more advanced, none of us were expecting it. We thought, hey, we have all these advancements in medicine. How could this happen to us? We have all these vaccines, and it affected me like everyone else. We were unexpectedly, number one. Number two, I did not expect to be sequestered and boxed up, holed up like everyone else. It all took us unexpectedly by force. Um, I think we're in a better place now. I mean, we're about to reach 5 years since the pandemic began. I don't suspect that we'll have another event quite like COVID in the near future because we always have bird flus. We always have Zika virus or any of those nasty little bugs. Fortunately, and I must say, the most powerful legacy that our current president, and the funny thing is, no one has been able to answer this on both sides. I'm like, what's the greatest legacy that our current president has left for us? And I don't even think he could probably answer that either, but I can answer it. Because the greatest legacy that he has ever left, and I must say, people that are supporters, and I'm kind of disappointed at the supporters as well, because his greatest legacy is that he saved, and he never ran with this, and no one gave him in his campaign these tools. The greatest legacy that he ever left for us in the entire world is that he saved humanity from millions and millions of deaths that could have occurred unless he had developed this vaccine at 1,000,000 miles per hour.
Well, let me ask you, because back in 2020, he was aware of the COVID pandemic, but
Yeah,
he didn't take it seriously. It was only when there was a blowback and people were pushing back where he did warp speed. So if people never, you know, said anything, like I give you an example, like going on now, Robert Kennedy and his freaking
well,
ringworm or worm, whatever.
I don't approve of Kennedy, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's like was freaking Robert Kennedy is saying, "Oh, now the vaccines are gonna be optional, but we're gonna take them off the market and do more research." That's another way of saying he's taking the vaccines away from people. So God forbid there's another pandemic, the bird flu, HM, whatever the hell it is. Because it's climate change, there will always be another pandemic. That is definite. But just saying to someone, you can't get the shot. I want to get vaccines. But here on the Keith Andrew Network, we support people to get vaccinated because, man, getting vaccinated is just the right thing to do. You're doing it for yourself, and then you're helping everyone else. Saying it's optional or taking it off the market completely, it's kind of like being in Nazi Germany because you're telling me what to do. So with the pandemic, Trump is responsible for most of those people dying. And it isn't just him. Not Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo was part of, the whole nursing home scandal and all of that stuff. So, yes, you look back at all the years before Trump, you look at Obama, you look at Bush, you look at Clinton, they always said the same thing. There will come a day when there's a great pandemic. But they never, ever took it seriously and they never took preparations. So once some of the shit hit the fan, it's kind of like a verbal wake up call, if that makes any sense.
I agree. Like, you have great valid points. Um, yeah, well, I'm with JFK wanting to take back vaccines, make them unavailable. That's not right. Period. You should have the choice, right? Because vaccines have existed for a while now. They work, even though there's naysayers that say they don't. They do work because, and I must say, the only three Republicans that voted against the confirmation of JK, um, Susan Collins of Maine, Miss Murkowski of Alaska, and Mr. McConnell, who is a recipient of the polio vaccine. He voted against the confirmation of JFK because he says, yes, vaccines do work.
And that's,
And
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you.
I just want to say real fast, but that's the scary thing is we're supposed to be going forward. Polio's now coming back on the rise. All these other diseases are coming back. Not to interrupt, I do apologize. But
No,
it's just It's really disturbing. I thought polio was dead and buried. Then I found out there was a case in like Rockland, New York, where someone had polio, and I'm like, that's freaking terrifying. Not
I
to
mean,
interrupt, I apologize.
oh, no worries. That's what makes it fun. You know, the reason why these type of diseases come back, and I'm when they stop, when people stop vaccinating themselves, you know the way it works. It's the hive. Once they get all the vaccinations, then even the people that are not vaccinated are protected. But there's always a possibility. And no one could predict what happened with the pandemic. And granted, like, they do blame Trump, and all leaders have some responsibility in that. But like, no one worldwide could see this coming. Um, he did the best he could. People died as a result, but no one could have stopped it. And fortunately, he stopped it, right? And I am no big fan of Trump. However, I give him his due. And
Yeah,
had he run on saying, "Hey, I'm going to lower your grocery prices. How about I saved humanity?" A lot more people would be aboard. But either way, he still won.
yeah,
um, and I'm very neutral when it comes to um, politics, right? I've been on both sides. I've been a Democrat. I've been a Republican. Now I'm just independent. I just listen to what's happening, and I give everyone a chance. I'm giving, even though JFK Jr. has things to say, I'm still giving him a chance, and we'll see what happens. And then, 4 years from now, we'll see what
well,
happens.
that's the other thing. My problem with Joe Biden is recently, I don't know if you read this, but it recently came out when he first became president, he was all right. But after midterms, it came out where he had problems and he wasn't all there, where he had to sleep in. He never woke up early. He woke up in the middle of the day. Then he had to go sleep early, all that other shit. But my problem with him is he should have said from day one, I'm going to be a one-term president, and then I'm going to be a transitional president. Okay, so leave in January. January comes along. This is how I would have done it. January would have started. You have a primary. You have 10 candidates who you can pick, and by August or August, you will say, it's down to these four. Now the public can decide who they're going to vote for. Instead, he dragged his feet and said, you're going to have Harris. And the problem with Harris is, on one hand, people are like, well, how can I vote for Harris? She doesn't talk, she doesn't speak. And I thought that was a good idea. If you can't say something, they can't use it against you. However, if you're not going to speak, then why is someone going to vote for you? And no one wanted her. She was pussed on us. I would have voted for Bernie Sanders, regardless if he's Jewish or not. Well, big deal. Who gives a shit? But there's so many other people that are more qualified. So you had Harris, and then she's like, "Well, I'm going to run again in 4 years." Why? You're setting the Democrat Party's is out of touch. They need a makeover. They need to find a way to fight for what? Universal health care, legalize marijuana, rate increase minimum wage, help people survive. Those are the four main subjects. Universal health care is a big thing. And instead, they're talking about all this other garbage, and this is why they lost. So Joe Biden's legacy is Trump because he did a shitty job. There's some things he did were good, but At the end of the day, when you look at his legacy as a president, his legacy will be Trump.
Well, you made a good, excellent point, a few excellent points. The main one being, I think, what would have been better for him to do, yes, said, hey, I'm going to be a one-term president, right? I'm at that would have been helpful. Why? Because it would have given them a chance. There should have been um, a primary. There should have been room for if he's going to step down the way he did and give someone else an opportunity. There should have been an opportunity for a larger group of people, primaries to reach to the very top. Hey, Kamala could have been included, but to have stepped down 3 or 4 months before the election was not a good strategy because it didn't give her or anyone else who could have stepped in chance to build a campaign. So I think that that's why they certainly lost, is because Biden should have given the whole Democratic Party a chance to bring someone forward narrow it down out of a group of candidates like it's normally done, and give them a year if he was failing cognitively, not 3 months. Because even though Kamala did have, of course, she had the last 3 years plus being vice president, also being a prosecutor. She was like squeaky clean, but it also what they should have given a chance for a larger field of people, including her, to build a campaign. And that's why, like you said, the legacy became Trump, because Biden didn't give anyone in the Democratic Party a chance at all.
That's why, because the whole Project 25, 2025 thing, they're going to dis they're going to destroy public education, and they put Wyndham McMahon. I mean, look, she's not even freaking qualified to be in charge of public education. And the whole thing of, oh, he has nothing to do with it. And then all of a sudden he puts the person in charge of the whole Project 25. It's kind of like, it's not 1968. It's really going to be bad at some point. But it's, hey, this is what you voted for, right? You give the people what they want because this is what they voted for. So you know what? Those people deserve whatever happens, to be honest.
Agreed. We have to wait and see what will happen in 4 years. However, choosing billionaires to run these departments in of itself becomes a conflict of interest because they're not qualified. These people are not qualified. And the thing is, Trump sees what's more important to him is loyalty over qualifications. And this is something that it probably hasn't been seen in decades, if not seen at all. And of course, right now, what's going on with the executive orders has with the 2025 project is shock and awe. It's to cause so much shock and awe, and it's something that's used in the military that people will not want to protest or want to go against. Now, usually a leader is deemed good if he doesn't limit people's rights. And unfortunately, unlike in 2016, he's doing that right now.
Well, how do you feel about him saying you will never have to vote ever again?
Well, now
I don't know what he even means by that.
that's more than a threat, that's a promise. And of course, you already know there's legislation being drawn up to create a third term, something we haven't seen since FDR was in office. He went 3 terms. There's a system of checks and balances. And right now, because both houses, the House and the Senate, are both Republican, they have conceded power of the coin or the power of spending to Trump, which is unprecedented, which is very one-sided, and it's not in tune with checks and balances. I'm just calling it the way I see it.
Right.
And that's an issue, because if you have a billionaire that's controlling everything, it's a conflict of interest. Now, I saw the way the president ran things back then. I did enjoy that he helped America, especially during pandemic, where Republicans and Democrats and himself, most of all, gave the American people unemployment on steroids, I call them. And he gave the American people, signed by him, 2 checks to help, because we were all hurting unless you had money up the wazoo. But right now, what I'm seeing is, yes, we need to cut down on spending, right? But the issue with that right now is, I don't see with Elon Musk, the richest man in history, doing what he wants without any controls or checks. Like, why not have a few Republicans and even Democrats watching over him as he does as whatever he wants? That's a conflict of interest, because he himself is a recipient of contracts by the government. Now, I'm all for cutting back, but there's an issue when you have someone that's not controlled by anyone.
That's true. We are definitely going to do a part 2, but I do have a couple of questions for you off the air. But wrapping up, I want you to be brutally honest. When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes? How do you feel now? And would you recommend it to other people?
I do recommend it to other people. Why? Because, number one, you're a different type of talk show host, but you asked all the pertinent and good, powerful questions. And as you can see, oh my Lord, did an hour just go by? We still have more time, right?
Yes.
We can talk all day, Keith. Believe me, I love talking. And I would recommend them because you provide great questions as well as engaging and challenging comments that people want to hear and talk about with topics that are now and matter, right? And by the way, you also have a disability. First and foremost, I look at the way we're talking, right? We're talking about pertinent issues that matter and that challenge us. And then, by the way, hey, you have this disability. I believe it's an empowerment. I look at it the other way around.
Absolutely. I do have a couple questions for you off the air, but wrapping up, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. Everyone make sure to like, share, comment on the KeithAndrew Network, and then stay tuned to 1183 coming up soon. Thank you, and have a good night. A big thank you to our guests for being here today. A big shout out for the people making the show. And until we meet again, I catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night.
Supporting me, and my message is all that